Colleagues, friends, comrades, may I, on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, thank you for being here today. I know that many of you, particularly those from the sugar industry, have come here with a heavy heart. Many of you are apprehensive about the future. There is fear existing in this and many other communities across Guyana. People are worried about their livelihoods in the future. And therefore, we need to ensure that whilst we may not be able to avert the impending disaster of the closure of the sugar industry, that we are prepared to struggle to stave off its worst ravages. And so, on Friday, in this community, Friday coming, you will witness an act of hypocrisy when the government will come with its entourage, and most likely they will send Nagamotu with a large fleet of vehicles and hundreds of security personnel, and he will come to this community and say how they love sugar workers and how they're saving the sugar industry. And then he will tell you that they have to close your estate, take away your livelihoods, because they're doing it in your interest. And that is the hypocrisy and the lack of respect that Nagamotu has for people. This will be the last year that we will be celebrating the lives of the Enmore Martyrs with a factory open here and doing sugar. And Nagamotu did this a few months ago when he went to Rose Hall to celebrate the lives of the Rose Hall martyrs. And in that celebration, he announced the closure of the Rose Hall estate. We have been growing sugar in Guyana for 300 years. And in 2 years of this government, not even under Burnham, they have decided to dismantle sugar. And for those who believe that this was a well thought out decision, that it was not motivated by politics, that they were inclined to listen to reason and to listen to analyses about whether this industry can work or not. Because that is the fallacy that they keep perpetrating. In the media, they would have said, we've studied this, we established a commission of inquiry, we consulted the opposition, we have a white paper in Parliament. But what is the fact? We have disputed that on many grounds. We've said that they are pursuing a path that is preconceived. Now I want to read you a note that I got. This is from Joseph Harman, and it says, it's titled Authorization to Engage in Discussions on the Future of Guyana's Sugar Industry. This authorization is dated the 16th of November 2016. This was before they invited us for the perfunctory, the cursory consultations, where they called on the 30th of December and invited us to meet on the 31st of December to discuss the sugar industry. And then they called in February, the day before, and invited us to another meeting, and then they closed the consultations. But this authorization was issued before any consultation, and before they had said that they had settled on the future of the industry. And this is how it goes. The government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, in pursuit of its efforts to modernize and diversify the sugar industry, is encouraging expressions of interest from suitably qualified companies and or other interested parties to acquire the state-owned Guyana Sugar Corporation. The Guyana government hereby authorizes Mr. Brian Wesley Curtin to engage in discussions on its behalf with interested companies, parties, regarding their possible interest in acquiring the Guyana Sugar Corporation in whole or in part. Remember this, in whole, the total industry, or in part. And to facilitate the arrangements for negotiations between the government and interested companies or parties. Mr. Curtin is authorized to share any and all information and documentation, including proprietary information required by interested parties, to determine their interest in entering into negotiations with the government of Guyana. Now, this was done in November last year. Here is Herman authorizing a Mr. Wesley Curtin, and we saw him write in the newspapers a couple days ago, because he was part of a fundraiser for the PNC in Miami. They authorized him in November to engage in discussions to sell part or the whole sugar industry in Guyana. That includes all the ones that they say they're saving and keeping. So when they started this perfunctory, this show of consultation, that they were listening to GAU and us, and they wanted to engage us on a way forward, they had already made the decision to sell the entire industry out. And this exposes the duplicity of this government. You cannot be trusted. It never negotiates in good faith. It came into government with a notion, in spite of its promises, that they will not dissolve the sugar industry. They'll pay the workers more. They'll make sugar profitable. That they came in with a notion that they had to dismantle the sugar industry, regardless of its consequences for Guyana and the workers of the industry. And today, we see an expression of this callous behavior by their refusal to say what they will do with the 10,000 workers and their families when they lose their jobs. And many have already lost their jobs. And that of the 10,000 people who work directly, their families, you're talking about 50,000 Guyanese who now have an uncertain future because of a political, a discriminatory decision on the part of this government. And therefore, all of those who've been saying, their lovers and the ones that kite show news, etc., that they're interested in a way forward working with us, we offered to do that. We said, all of the things that you were saying about debt, as Sipong Narain told you, and about the future, we have a different perspective. Sugar can be saved. Sugar from 1976 to 1996 made a huge contribution to the Treasury. It paid the sugar levy. At one time, 1/5 of total government revenues came from the sugar industry. We carried Guyana for a long period. And even after that, when the sugar levy was ended in 1996, we then, Kaisuko continued to make a positive contribution to the industry. It was only when there was a cut in the European Union prices for sugar that the industry where we lost $8 billion per annum in revenue, or 40 million US, that is when the government had to start looking to put some money into the industry. But the European Union gave us over 100 million euros as part of the transitional arrangement. If you use that alone, that is more than the cost of Skeldon. It's more than the cost of Skeldon, the whole factory that the European Union gave us in grant. And so today it is not true that sugar cannot be restored in the future. It's not true that sugar cannot be profitable. If we work very hard and we look at the multidimensional contributions of sugar to our economy, we will find through an economic analysis, not just a profit and loss analysis, but an economic one, that sugar makes a bigger contribution to Guyana than the subsidy it gets even in this difficult period. But sugar had always made a positive contribution. Contrast that approach to how we treated the bauxite industry. When bauxite needed help, we gave the help because we were concerned about Kwakwani and Aichuni and Linden and the residents there, about how they will keep their families going. And we made sure we work with those communities and the industry to keep bauxite alive in those places. But this government, because it is so partisan, because it views everything through a political, racial, discriminatory lens, it will shoot the country's prospects of improving life just to satisfy its political urge. And this is something that we have to expose. Comrades, every single time we were in government, we always had a positive attitude to the future. We will come to you and talk about our plans for the future. When I come here tonight, the only message I can bring to you is a sad message. That things are going to get significantly worse in your lives and in the lives of Guyanese before it gets better when the PPP resumes office. But for the next, once APNU is in power, with their inept economic vision, with their attempts to all day long generate excuses as to why our economy is floundering and we're losing jobs rather than tackling the fundamental problems of our country, then people's lives are going to change for the worse. The tax measures that you see last year, the 200 new tax measures, they haven't kicked in fully as yet. They're being implemented now. And when they're implemented, you will see your cost of living going up. The business community would be unable to survive in the new tax environment and with the harassment from GRA. And they will not invest and they will not create more jobs for the future. So you will see not only a deterioration in terms of cost of living going up, but less jobs being produced in the future because no one wants to invest in this country. And right now, people are losing jobs rather than creating jobs, as they promise, creating jobs. Secondly, the sugar measures have not been implemented fully. So when the year end comes and the closure starts taking place in some of these areas, that's when the hardships would kick in. For the small miners, the 2% final turnover tax, which has been changed to 28%, it is only when they have to file their income tax returns at the end of the year that they will realize that they are liable to thousands of dollars more of taxes, and many of them will fall out of mining. In the forestry sector already, there's a total collapse People can't find markets for their products. In construction activity, it has gone down to suboptimal levels, largely because of the taxation policy of this government. In retail trade, because they're taking so much money out of the economy through taxation, the VAT alone will give them about $21 billion this year more, taking it out of people's pockets. They are sapping the life of economic activities in Guyana, and therefore retail trade is going down, and almost every business you talk to is laying off people. That's the picture of Guyana. And every single day you listen to this government, rather than addressing the economic decline, rather than saying, hold on a minute, we have to ensure that rice and sugar and bauxite and all the other sectors of the economy do well. They have now latched on to a couple of excuses. That they're cleaning out corruption from the economy. That is why things are bad. Well, if they're cleaning corruption from the economy, every day you see Kaichor News, which is still PNC mouthpiece. The Kaichor News is still the PNC mouthpiece. If you open the paper every day, you see scandal at GRA, $10 billion to collect from heavy-duty equipment people. That the people brought in new vehicles from Suriname for the past 10 years, they didn't register them. That people didn't pay taxes, etc. Now, if you have all of these taxes to collect that the PPP didn't collect, you don't need to increase the rates, you just need to collect the taxes and then you'll get more money. It doesn't make sense. It does not make economic sense. But you know, those scandals that Kaichor News puts there is to create excuses for this government. That they inherited a situation that was full of corruption. Well, if so many people were not paying taxes and our country was the fastest growing country in the region, 10 years of continuous growth, we left 165 billion in recurrent revenue, 700 million US in the central bank, $40 billion in the semi-autonomous agencies to the so-private, they call the private accounts. Why is it that Guyana was making rapid progress and was defying all odds? It makes no sense, the arguments that they're doing. So now, today, the Minister of Finance said that the problem with the economy is the debts that the PPP took, the bad debts. About 3 months ago, he presented a report in Parliament and said how wonderful we did. How wonderful we did. And the Greenwich, the debt, everyone knows in Guyana, when we took over, the debt was 9.5 times the size of our economy. Because our economy has grown and we repaid the debt, by the time we left office, it was less than half of the size of the economy. We had reduced it. And that the debt servicing in 1992, according to Carl Greenwich himself, was 153% of revenue, of all the taxes collected. Today, when we left in 2015, it was 4% of revenue. So we left them a lot of money, and that is why they could have passed 3 budgets, the 3 biggest budgets in our history, even though they're claiming we don't have money and we left them a bankrupt economy. They passed 3 of the biggest budgets so far, totaling about $700 billion. That's not the symptom of a country that doesn't have money. That's not the symptom, these huge budgets. The problem is where are they spending the $700 billion? And that is it. On themselves, and I can list the things. So Granger goes off, he flies off to the Bahamas and spends $40 million on a 2-day trip that under the PPP we would have spent $1.5 billion. And they gave DDL and banks, DIH and the others now are going to benefit from it. an $80 billion write-off. What is tantamount to $80 billion write-off, but they can't find $1.7 billion to keep Wales open. They can't find about $9 billion a year to keep the entire sugar industry open. I said to Granger, you've just given the two companies that produce alcohol the equivalent of what could have kept sugar for 10 years into the future. 10 years without no change, with them paying the API and giving the workers a salary increase. But it shows their priority. It's not that they don't have money, it is where they're funneling the money now. And so, look, the office of the president, they're spending $100 million building a fence around the office of the president. No public tender. We took over from Burnham, you had a chain link fence, we left the chain link fence there. It was not important. It was not important to build massive fences. Nagamutu had to get about $40 million of furniture because he don't like Sam's furniture. Sam is sitting there. They don't like it, and he found Granny Sugar in the place that Sam was. They spent another $40 million in fixing it up. This is the sort of thing that is spending $1.4 billion on the failed Durban Park Stadium. Another $174 million a year to rent a bottom house from one of their cronies. Their per diem has gone up. These ministers, we have 27 of them, and most of them are totally useless. Totally useless. They're just shuffling a pack of clowns around. Totally useless. Don't even know their brief and stuff. And so, comrades, this is where the $700 billion is going in the three budgets. Not on helping sugar to survive, not on helping rice industry or bauxite or the small gold miners, but spending on themselves, because this government has a fetish for things, you know, military parades, nice arches, parks, etc., that don't create wealth for people, don't create jobs for them, etc. So my point is that with this economic philosophy, no improvement in their lives. Guyana is going to, we took Guyana over when we were classified internationally as a HIPIC country. It was a heavily indebted, low-income country. That is what HIPIC means by the World Bank. When we left office, Guyana was in the upper middle income category around the world. That's how we changed Guyana. We took a bankrupt country over and we left it as economically viable with great prospects for the future. Oil and gas was found under the PPP. The two new gold mines came in under the PPP that's keeping the economy going. They have not had a single investment now. So how are they going? What are they going to do in the future? So they are panicked now, and they're selling this new dream, particularly to their supporters. Oh, don't give us a little bit more time. Oil will solve all the problems. Oil. And they're so shameless not even to acknowledge that they did nothing to bring the oil industry in Guyana. So let me tell you, tomorrow we have a bill in Parliament that will establish a petroleum commission. And this bill is very oily. It's very slick, like Trotman. Very, very slick. So they used to criticize us like ministers had too much powers. But let me give you an indication of what they will do. They want to manage the oil money after promising a sovereign wealth fund years now and not coming up with a draft or a model that will ensure the proper use of the money. They are now proceeding with the establishment of a commission that will manage the oil industry. And let me give you an indication about the powers of the minister now. The minister can terminate the board at any time. The minister can discharge the function of the board if the board is not appointed. So he has now the powers of the entire board. The minister can become the chairman of the board if he doesn't appoint a chairman of the board. The minister appoints the chairman, the deputy chairman, he appoints the secretary to the board. This is like a Trotman Petroleum Commission, not a Guyana Petroleum Commission. And then they're establishing a reserve fund that will be a direct charge on the consolidated fund. So if they make a loss, then the money has to come from the consolidated fund to support this entity. These are the same people who were saying that we were creating slush funds outside and they had to do an audit. And you remember they did the audit of GGMC, Guyana Forestry Commission, the Lands and Survey, the NFMU, National Frequency Management Unit, where they said we had private accounts. And what did they find? $40 billion of money sitting there because we were saving it, we were not using it up. And the audits all came back clean. All came back clean. And so now they are doing worse. So we have to be careful. This is the same minister who went along with another one of their activists and said in the Essequibo Coast that we will give you free cooking gas 2020. The people didn't find a gas field, they found an oil field. We know but the gas there, it will be uneconomical, the little gas in the oil field, to bring it to the shore, costing hundreds of millions of dollars. There's no demand, but they're promising free cooking gas already. It is the same Trotman last year who said that they will establish a facility at Crab Island and it will create 10,000 jobs and cost $500 million. Now, we don't know where this money is coming from. $500 million US dollars is 100 billion Guyana dollars, over 100 billion. They can't find 9 billion to keep sugar and 10,000 jobs intact there, but they can spend $100 million. But I want to wager you, because it is all hype, that nothing will happen at Crab Island because it is not feasible. And so the people in Rose Hall and New Amsterdam, that they are promising that they will get jobs in the facility in New Amsterdam that they're building on Crab Island, those people will be fooled because they will be living on dreams. They will be believing dreams. And so these people have no credibility. We can't believe anything they say. They've demonstrated to this country they will break every single promise they make. And then they will lie to people, like the Nagamotu and the others, lying all the time about what they said on the campaign trail. So comrades, this, nothing now, no help to any industry. We're losing jobs, we're losing welfare. The foreign currency earning, you know how they stabilize the currency? Because you've seen a sharp reduction in supply to the market. All the sectors except in gold are earning less foreign currency. So foreign direct investment has gone down by over $100 million. The remittances to Guyana has gone down. So the supply to the market has been reduced. So what they did after the exchange rate was sliding, they called the cambios, which is illegal. And they said, you can't buy for more than $2.15. If you buy for more than $2.15, we will take away your license. What they did to the people who were selling their money, the exporters, the gold and the rice exporters, they said you can't sell for more than $2.15. And then they told the cambios you can't sell with a greater spread than $3. So it is through executive fiat that they're keeping the currency stable now. The moment that anyone, and that can't continue forever, the moment that that is withdrawn, the executive fiat is withdrawn, the exchange rate will tumble, and you will see an even further increase in the cost of living. So when I try to rationalize, because, all right, people can say, maybe things are bad today, but it will get better in the future. I can't say that with any certainty with these people. One thing I can be certain about is that it will get worse in Guyana. It will get worse. And I don't like to take that message to people. But we have to be realistic, and therefore we have to stand up and ensure that we do not succumb to any bullyism, that we fight for our rights. A whole generation of leaders who preceded us, the Enmore Martyrs, were killed not because they were just fighting for sugar rights, but for decency in Guyana. It had a national implication, significance, the struggle of the Enmore Martyrs. They were fighting to change a mindset, a colonial mindset that saw us as natives who were the supplier of labor, and therefore with very limited rights that they can control at their will. They fought against that. When the PPP came into office, it fought again to change the colonial mindset, and it was through this struggle that we achieved independence and freedom, and we became the masters of our own destiny, not second-class citizens in Guyana. And then when those freedoms were taken away from us, we didn't lose hope. We continued to struggle. Many people lost their lives. Yesterday was Walter Rodney's anniversary when they assassinated him. And many others from the PPP were sent to jail, harassed here in Enmore. Many of the older comrades know what I'm talking about. The long years of struggle against a repressive regime, and we did not lose hope. And so now I find a different mood maybe. I saw the spirit of that struggle in the people in Georgetown when the parking meter was going to take away their livelihoods in a corrupt contract, and when they were worried that their businesses would falter. Across race and across politics, they joined together and said, this can't happen. We're going to fight it. And the government caved in. We need the same spirit in the communities across Guyana. We need that spirit. We must stand up for our rights. If we allow them to snatch these rights again, how would we be able to look our children in their faces and say, we fought against this? Even if we fail, we fought. Parents, what are you going to say to your children when you can't send them to school next year as is happening to Wales? What are you going to say? That daddy or mommy sit down at home and allow this government to run amok and not say a word? Not say a word? If we allow that to happen, then we will live in that kind of country where we'd always be controlled, and you would have a small military or former military cabal who controls everything in Guyana. People, Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, Amerindian, ordinary people will suffer, but they will suffer in silence. We live in the type of country we fight for. And therefore, I want to ask you to make sure that you're part of that struggle. And the struggle is in many forms. It might be sugar for you today, but you also have an interest in free and fair elections because we fought for that for many, many years. And if you don't have free and fair elections in the country, then we go back to those days when people who we don't want to will rule us. And people, all Guyanese will suffer for it, and all Guyana, because we will have another 500,000 people, in spite of the oil money coming in, another 500,000 people flying out of Guyana, getting away from here because they're being persecuted, because they can't find jobs, because they're being discriminated against, because the society is not free. And every human being wants to live in a free society, regardless of their politics, whether they're APNU or PPP. And that's why we have to fight. We have to fight to make sure that what happens at GCOM is satisfactory to all the people of Guyana. The comrades, you know of the ongoing engagement we've had with the president on this matter, the appointment of the chairman of GCOM. We have followed the Constitution, and yet he has unreasonably rejected 2 lists. In the last discussions we had, I said to him that the Constitution is on our side. The interpretation of the Constitution was settled even by the PNC. That is on our side. And the history of the submission of lists is on our side, because Mr. Hoyt agreed, who was a single senior counsel, a lawyer. He agreed to the interpretation of the Constitution that we all agreed to, and Mr. Hoyt submitted lists that included Granger's name on the list twice. And I said, we don't agree with your interpretation of the provisions of the Constitution. Nevertheless, we are prepared to work to ensure that we have a chairman. So let me tell you what are the options. One, if the president says submit a 3rd list, we have no choice, because the Constitution allows the president to reject any list without giving a reason. But we think it's unreasonable what he has done. He has put up all of these people there, and we have put up professionals, judges, people who can hold and conduct conduct themselves in that position in an impartial manner. Yet he has rejected. So once he demanded a 3rd list, we had no choice but to say, yes, we will submit. Because if we say no, we're not submitting a 3rd list, he will say, well, I don't have a list, so I will go ahead and appoint unilaterally. So that is why we had to. The second thing he could do is he could say, I'm going ahead unilaterally. And I've already made that clear, that if he seeks to appoint a person of his own choice, that would be unconstitutional, illegal. We'll fight it in the courts and on the streets, all of us together. All of us together. That is it. We have to do that, because it's about the future of this country. And I made it clear that would be the case. He has said he's not interested in appointing anyone unilaterally. So he wants to work in a collaborative manner. So what about this collaboration? You will see we agreed to put together a high-level committee to discuss, explore options in case the 3rd list, no one is found from the 3rd list. And what do we have in mind? I made it clear that there were you have to have 3 prevailing conditions under which we will reach agreement if we are to move forward in exploring new options. One, that whatever will be agreed there in that committee must satisfy both parties, the PPP as well as APNU. So we are not going in there as a junior partner. It must be satisfactory. Secondly, it must be constitutional. It has to fit in accordance with our constitution. And the third precondition is that it must not violate the delicate balance that the Carter Center formula put in place, where the Elections Commission, you have three, and one person is selected through a collaborative approach, that it must exhibit all the attributes of fairness. So this is what we will explore, but only if those three conditions are met will we agree. And I said to him, Mr. President, let me give you an example what I said to him. I said, Mr. President, you have identified several conditions. He said, which we have agreed to. And I said, no, I have not agreed. I wrote you saying, I do not agree to your condition, these additional attributes that you put forward, because they are not part of the Constitution. They're part of your interpretation. Nevertheless, we'll try to see if we can find people who will meet those attributes, or who have those attributes. So I said, you have one of the preconditions, or one of these conditions, as someone with deep knowledge in electoral matters. Where are we going to find this person in Guyana? And especially people who are not political. It's almost impossible to meet that condition, who have deep knowledge in electoral matters. So I said, maybe we can broaden the pool, that there is one part of the Carter Center formula which says that you are confined to submitting only Guyanese. Why not let us jointly amend that part of the Constitution to say now that we can submit, we can search around the world. So my list now can show people from around the world. I know some of the best people from around the world. So that was one of my suggestions, and we will explore that. The president said to me, why not establish a search committee? And I said, Mr. President, you have zealously guarded your rights under the Constitution, the right to choose in an unfettered manner. So if I agree to a search party, then you will be part of selecting my nominees too. So you would help me to submit, and then you will choose too. So that will violate the entire spirit and the Constitution, so I could not agree with that. So a lot of this exploration, we are going into discussions in good faith, but we want to ensure that the fairness in the selection process is preserved. So I know the reason why I'm going at great length explaining this, because many people were confused when they saw we agreed to submit a third list, and we don't have a choice, because if we don't, then the president will say, I don't have a list, so I can go ahead on my own. And then why simultaneously establish this committee? And I've just explained to you why.